Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Hannah. I am a trauma coach, biohacking coach, and content creator. I also practice medicine, and in this video, we are going to be doing a continuation of my other video where we were talking about the 7 types of depression, how to identify them, and what to do exactly to address each and every single one of them. Now, this is my third time filming this particular video, so I hope it goes well. If you have not yet checked out part 1, leave this video, go watch that part 1 video first, and then come back to this one. So we stopped last time talking about depression due to lack of purpose. Now, we're going to start talking about depression due to burnout. And some people might say, well, Hannah, isn't depression due to burnout the same thing as depression due to lack of purpose? Because that lack of purpose leads to burnout. And it's like, yes, they can be interconnected. If you remember in the first video, I talked about the fact that you might have 1, 2, or 3 of these different types of depression, but not everyone who is burnt out feels a lack of purpose. Example. Unfortunately, there is a common experience among a lot of moms where they end up feeling burnt out. Now, there are a lot of moms that say, I love being a mom. I love motherhood. I feel like this is what I was meant to do. And yet, because of all of the different things that they need to do, from, just feeling like they're being pulled in multiple different directions, and they're having to deal with the exhaustion of raising kids who have so much energy, and what happens when the kids are sick, and they have all of these things that are constantly on their mind. It's very easy to neglect themselves and their self-care, leading to burnout. Burnout is extremely insidious in that there's such a long journey to get to burnout, where many people are ignoring the red flags because they think it's just not gonna end up happening. And then once they do hit burnout, it is a crash and burn, quite literally. And I remember my experience with burnout. When I burned out, I hit the wall so bad that I had to tap out for an entire year to recover. And it actually did end up stealing the sense of purpose that I had in what I was doing at that time. I was doing a lot of Islamic community organizing. I was studying medicine. It was very hard on me. And so when I talk about these different depressions, I don't want to ever give the illusion that addressing them is just easy and it takes a week and that's it. For some people, yeah, we talked about how most people are going to resolve the depression very quickly, but sometimes it takes a long time. And this is part of the concept of God conscious self-improvement. In God conscious self-improvement, I've said this in other videos, you have to be willing to play the long game. You have to be willing to do the things that you need to do to meet your goal for a long sustained period of time. And that includes when it comes to tackling depression. So with that being said, when it comes to burnout, here are some things that you can do to address this type of depression and hopefully recover from it. First things first is learning how to say no. You need to learn what your capacity is and what it is that you can do and what it is that you just don't have the space for. And you need to learn how to be confident about that too. And the thing about it is, I'll give this example, right? When we see a carton of eggs and it has 12 eggs, it has a dozen eggs, it would be weird to think that someone blames a carton for not being able to hold a 13th egg, right? Nobody would ever do that because we know the capacity of the egg carton is 1 dozen eggs. That's it. When we are honest about what our capacity is and we're able to hold a certain level of respect for that, it's harder for people to be angry when we're not able to do that. Right. And sometimes this means that we have to do a practice of setting boundaries. Now, I want to kind of talk about boundaries here because you might have heard about boundaries in kind of the non-religious space, mental health space, self-improvement space. And because it is so pushed by non-religious rhetoric, it is very easy for setting boundaries to become un-Islamic if you do it wrong. And I don't want you to think that it's not possible to set boundaries in a way that is respectful, kind, and still upholding the rights of different people in our lives in the way that Islam teaches us. You can. And maybe one day I'll make a video about this, but the act of setting boundaries is basically saying, like, these are the things that are damaging to me, and these are the things that I can do, and these are the things that I can't do, and then repeatedly making that clear in a respectful way, right? So for example, like there's the let's say you're at work and you find that your boss is constantly expecting you to stay after. Now, a boundary would look like, so my work, when I signed up for this job, my shift was supposed to end at 5 p.m. I will be leaving at 5 p.m. And unfortunately, some people are in abusive jobs, and that's a whole other, this is under the assumption that you're not in an abusive situation, but that would be holding a boundary. And so if they say, hey, can you stick to whatever? Sometimes you might have an excuse like, no, I need to go pick up my kids, or I have things I need to do to get home. Other times it might be, no, this is not a part of my job description, or I'm not able to do it because it is not within the time frame. And the person who hired you just kind of has to deal with it, because you have set the boundary, rightfully so, about what you're supposed to be doing based on what you're getting paid to do, right? So that is the example of setting a boundary. Now, it's a process, it's a learning process. There's also the element of learning how to stand up for yourself. There's how do you communicate things in a respectful way? How do you not burn bridges? If you're a people pleaser and we're talking about setting boundaries or saying no, that can be anxiety invoking in and of itself. I have a whole video about how to overcome people pleasing, if you want to go find that on my channel. But learn to say no to things, and that's because otherwise saying yes to some things is sometimes us saying no to ourselves. And it's not selfish when you're literally physically and mentally exhausted to say, like, I can't do it. If you are sick, if you were genuinely sick, right? If you had the flu and someone asked you, hey, can you come help us move furniture in our house? And you said, I have the flu. Nobody's going to question it, right? When it comes to burnout, burning out is a physiologically taxing experience, meaning it does actually weigh on you and can make you sick at a different level. I literally mean, like, it spikes your cortisol. It's going to affect your sleep. It's affecting your immune system. It really does. And so you being able to say no is sometimes just giving your space for your body to recover a little bit, right? So I hope that perspective shift is helpful to some of you guys. The other thing is, learn to streamline things and make things more efficient. Sometimes we bring the burnout on ourselves because we might be a little stubborn or unwilling to change the way we do things to a way that actually makes things easier for us in the long run, or saves us time, or helps us not be as burned out. So an example I'll give is, if you're someone who works a full-time job, but you're also very picky about keeping your space clean or your house clean, maybe there are more efficient ways to fulfill the keeping the house clean aspect. Maybe there are better products you can buy, right? Better cleaning products. Maybe you can get a Roomba or something like that will self-clean so you don't have to do it. Maybe if you have a huge load of laundry that ends up taking forever to do, you start doing it more often. Maybe you start moving or creating a system that's more efficient, and that, like, you find that you change I don't know, you have a laundry bin in the bathroom and in the bedroom, or close to where you end up needing to take things, versus just one laundry bin in the laundry area that you now have to pick up everything and take the dirty laundry to, right? It's how do I modify my environment, and what are resources that I can use to make things more efficient so that I can save myself time. Maybe it's outsourcing things if you can afford to do that, or if you have, sometimes it doesn't take money. Sometimes you maybe have people around you who are like, you can actually give that to them. Maybe it's teaching other people to do the things that you feel like you're the only one who can do them, right? Trusting other people to take on some other responsibility, being a little more at ease if they make the mistakes because they're still learning too, right? Outsource as much as you can. So that's what I mean when I say streamline and make things more efficient. Next, and the final thing is, don't be afraid to ask for help. I know not everything, sometimes we're not able to ask for help for everything, or it can be a really uncomfortable experience for a lot of us, but being willing to ask for help is something that can offload a lot of stress and help mitigate burnout to a high degree, right? And this takes being honest with ourselves of what do we need help with, because sometimes we just don't want to admit that we need help because we feel like it's a reflection of our own weakness, but it can be really, really important. And you don't want to end up getting to a point where if you're moving towards burnout, that's the perfect time for you to implement these things before you start experiencing the depression of burnout. So that is burnout. Next is depression due to distance from God. The thing about depression that is secondary to distance from God is it is extremely easy to resolve this type of depression, right? And when you create distance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are basically signing up for a life of misery. the thing about separating ourselves from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is it starts off with those whispers of shaitan, where you're doing things that don't seem like they're really going to have an effect, but they are having an effect on your spiritual metaphorical heart, right? The qalb that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran. And after a long period of time of that effect happening, you start to numb out that like khashya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that belovedness and that awe that we feel of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts to go away. Distance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is easy to address, because all it takes is one single step from us in the right direction, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala busts the doors wide open. And why wouldn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I mean, when we are seeking closeness to Allah, when that's what He asks of us, Allah rewards us even for the intention of that. There's no other time in the world where you making an intention to do something is going to get you the full reward of it, right? If I make an intention to come to work an hour early and then I don't do it, my boss isn't going to pay me for that 1 hour, because it never happened. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you make the intention to build your relationship with Him, you're rewarded for that. And then when you continue to take the steps, you're rewarding. And not only that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the path in front of you easy, and He inspires your heart towards the things that are going to make this journey right for you, right? That is a beautiful thing about it. So how do you deal with depression due to distance from God? First things first is you make the intention. Make the intention that khalas, you are no longer going to allow yourself to make up excuses, because you recognize that when you distance yourself from God, you are cutting off your lifeline. It's like if you were drowning in the ocean and I threw you a floaty and you took a knife and you stabbed it, because that is the thing that is going to pull us out of misery in this dunya and in the akhirah. There's a reason why stats show us that people who are faithful and who believe in God have higher resilience and lower levels of mental health disorders, as well as an ability to bounce back more easily, right? Because there's something deeper that we are rooting ourselves in, even if the person is not Muslim, just the fact that they believe in the existence of Allah. And obviously we are the ones who have the deen of Islam, which is the one and only deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have even more of a blessing in that. So make a sincere intention. Next is dua. Make a sincere dua. If you're someone who finds yourself distancing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the opportunity to make dua is it is so important to take that opportunity. And it looks like you, one, recognizing that you are in a place that you know is not going to serve you in this world or in the next. Two is recognizing very humbly and very vulnerably that you are the one who walked away, right? You are the one. It doesn't matter if you can exactly align out how you did it, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't distance Himself from us, right? We're the ones that make the decisions actively to do the things that pull ourselves away. And so be vulnerable about that and recognize your fault in that. After that is truly just praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance. You don't have to have all the answers right now, but when you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that, He's going to inspire you with the activities and the intentions and the dua and all of that is going to help bring you closer. And then after that, you can start thinking about what do I need to introduce back into my life to build this relationship with Allah. And it can be a fun little experiment for you. Sometimes it's like we take the newness and the excitement and beauty out of it. So when people are falling in love, when you have like a newlywed couple or in their honeymoon season, it's so fun for them. This relationship with Allah, coming back into it, should be so fun for us, because it's like there's so many things that I can do. I can make dua, I can pray, I can give charity, I can read Quran, I can build my relationship with other people, and all of these things are getting me reward, right? It can be this fun experiment. I literally would make documents. I would create Google Docs where it's like, this is what my plan is going to be, and then I would just watch myself make the progress. The last thing I will say is, when it comes to building your relationship up with Allah, your priority should be getting back to your fard. And your fard are your that means your obligations. If you left salah, and that is the biggest obligation that every single person is required to do if they are Muslim, that is where you need to start, because salah is the only obligation that we have that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically saying, if you are not in a coma, if you are not dead, and you are not bleeding, right, you need to be praying. Even if there's no water, even if there is nothing that you can make wudu with, you need to use dirt or dust or sand and make tayammum and still pray. That is how important of an obligation it is. When we distance ourselves from that obligation, even if we're not doing it if you're not doing it perfectly, that is what I was talking about of cutting off the lifeline, because salah is truly a meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you're rebuilding that relationship with Allah and you're trying to bring yourself closer, start off with the fard and make that a non-negotiable. And I have an entire video for people who are struggling with their salah. It's one of the earlier videos that I did, so you can go to that video. All right, we are on the final type of depression that I'd like to discuss, and that is, I almost dropped my whiteboard, depression from dopamine burnout. So this is an interesting type of depression because it's not one that if you had asked me like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, but like 15, 20 years ago, I wouldn't have thought of this one. But now with the advent of social media and TikTok and Instagram, all of these different things that are constantly stimulating our brains and constantly giving us dopamine hits, so many people are experiencing this. Now, what is dopamine? What is dopamine burnout? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, meaning it's a chemical that operates within our nervous system with the purpose of it is our neurochemical of motivation, our neurochemical of feeling good, right? So dopamine is when we have a release of dopamine, it's supposed to make us want to do something. It makes us feel excited. It makes us feel happy. Dopamine is also the neurochemical of addiction. When people are getting addicted to something, it is because it's spiking dopamine and our brain loves that, and then it tries to run back to it. The thing about it is our dopamine systems, like every system in our body, works on a feedback loop, meaning except in very few circumstances, there's no way in our body that things can just keep going up and up and up and up, right? So dopamine, if it constantly is being spiked more than it needs to, eventually the system just crashes and we lose the levels of dopamine that we were able to have because our body cannot sustain those levels anymore. And what does that is repeated exposure to dopamine increasing events, right? So social media is huge for this because it's literally is designed, like the people who design social media design it with how often can we get people hooked on it to keep them longer on the app. And so they put all these things that increase our dopamine, the likes, the comments, the way things pop up on your page, the fact, I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but it'll repeatedly let you know that people liked your comment or your posts, even if it already notified you a day ago. And that's just to maintain that dopamine. If you are dealing with dopamine burnout leading to depression, you know this because it's like part of it is that you can't necessarily identify a specific event or thing that is causing it. Maybe there's no identifiable burnout experience that you have in your life. It's like you're not tired of work, you're not tired of school, you were doing okay otherwise, and it kind of just crept up on you. The way you address dopamine burnout is you do a dopamine detox. Now, I mentioned I do biohacking, self-improvement coaching, right? I do trauma coaching. That's a group coaching program. If you're interested in information on that, it is linked below. It's always linked below. And if I also do biohacking and self-improvement coaching, which is one-on-one, and I teach a system of dopamine detox. But I'm going to give you one example of a dopamine detox method to help with this, which is I will stand by this. If you are someone who has social media, delete your apps for 1 week, just 1 week. Do it for 1 week and look at the difference in your mood and your anxiety level. There is just giving your brain a break for 1 week is enough to start demonstrating a noticeable difference. I would do this, and oh my God, the way that my depression would lift was absolutely insane. And stats show and research shows that you have to do it for 30 days for it to actually be effective. But starting off with 1 week, I think, is very reasonable for a lot of people. So you can see, hey, there's a difference being made here, and then continue it. So those are the 7 types of depression. Now, of course, guys, depression is a lot more complex than this. If people are getting to where they're experiencing a full-blown depressive disorder, it's good to seek out support from a mental health professional. If you are finding like I'm doing this, it's not working, then go seek out support from a therapist, counselor, psychiatrist, go to your primary care, find someone who can help kind of guide you towards other options. And that might be helpful as well. There's a really good channel called Med Circle, which is a mental health channel where they dive into depression a lot and kind of how to treat it, how to cope with it. So that's something you can look at as well. If you guys would like this kind of content, please like this video, comment below, tell me what kind of depression, if you ever dealt with depression, what kind of depression you felt like was affecting you. And then also, what did you do that you felt helped? Was it any of the things that I mentioned? Was it something completely new? This is a community, so let's try to learn from one another. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.